So it's a new week, and I wanted to continue this series of looking at OHL team histories. I know it's been about a week since I posted the last video. That was on the Guelph Storm. Guelph has a very fascinating history. If you haven't seen that video yet, you want to go check that out because the Guelph Storm, I think, are a little underrated as an organization, and I explain why in that video. But for this video, we're going to be looking at one of the cornerstone teams, I guess we could call them, the Ottawa 67's. So just by the name, it goes to show the team started as an organization in 1967, which of course is the year of Canada's centennial year. I think it's a clever name. And then you got the barber pole jerseys, probably one of the best jerseys in the Canadian Hockey League. They represent the city of Ottawa well with the colors red, black, and white. When you think Ottawa 67's, you can't help but think of those barber pole jerseys. And for me, another thing I think about when I hear the Ottawa 67's is Brian Kilrea. For Kilrea, he was the head coach of the Ottawa 67's between 1974 and 2009. So he has had quite the run with the 67's. However, during that time, he did spend 2 years as an assistant coach with the New York Islanders. That was back in 1984 after their dynasty run. And then he decided to come back to the Ottawa 67's. He also retired going into the 1994-95 season and then went right back behind the bench. He was just a natural head coach. He just loved the job of teaching these young players the game and to get them ready for the professional life or even going off to university hockey. But Kilrea, he was a staple behind the bench for so long and then finally left the role as head coach in 2009. He would then go on to be the general manager of the team and then was back behind the bench for one game in 2014. That was for his 80th birthday, and they happened to win that game by a score of 6-3 over the Mississauga Steelhead. So Kilrea, quite the history with the Ottawa 67's. And with that, Kilrea is the winningest coach of all time in junior hockey with 1,193 victories, and he coached 2,156 games. Quite remarkable. And I did the video about the London Knights and how Dale Hunter is kind of chasing Brian Kilrea right now for some of those records. So it's kind of interesting, the connection between Kilrea and Hunter and just seeing that race for coaching wins. But still, Brian Kilrea, quite the legend with the Ottawa 67's. And some other legends too, comes down in the scoring category. I'm going to look at the top 10 scorers of all time for the Ottawa 67's franchise. Leading the way is Brett Seguin. He had 102 goals, 303 assists, good for 405 points. He leads the way by a safe margin. Andrew Castles, he's second in scoring, 111 goals, 266 assists, 377 points. Then we have Tyler Toffoli. He is third overall in 67 scoring, 163 goals, 170 assists, good for 333 points. I remember the one season, it was between Tyler Toffoli and Michael Scarbosa of the Sudbury Wolves for leading the way in scoring that season. And those two just went back and forth throughout. And Tyler Toffoli, of course, having a pretty good career at the National Hockey League level as well. And as you see, third overall in scoring in Ottawa junior hockey history. Fourth is Austin Keating, 113 goals, 212 assists, 325 points. Corey Locke is fifth, 132 goals, 180 assists, good for 312 points. And then you have Logan Couture. He is sixth, 111 goals, 176 assists, good for 287 points in his junior hockey career with Ottawa. And then Alan McCauley, he is seventh all time, 119 goals, 165 assists, 284 points as a member of the 67's. Then Dan Tessier, he is eighth, 125 goals, 157 assists, 282 points. And then Jeff Five, 103 goals, 165 assists, 268 points. That puts him in ninth. And 10th in scoring for Ottawa, Steve Washburn, 98 goals, 168 assists, 266 points. Some pretty big names there in the all-time scoring list for the 67's. And then when you shift focus to goaltenders, Craig Hillier has the most wins in Ottawa 67's history with 80. And then you have Seamus Kotiak, 75 wins to his credit. Jim Ralph is third with 73 wins. Cedric Andre, 67 wins for him in his time with Ottawa. And then Peter Mrazek, he is 5th overall with 63 wins as a member of the 67's. Now, the names that we mentioned with the scoring and the goaltenders are pretty big. What about the retired numbers? It starts off with a pair of number 7s. Dennis Potvin and Doug Wilson both had their number 7s retired. Two big names, of course, Dennis Potvin going on and winning Stanley Cups, Doug Wilson, a great NHL career, and then eventually a general manager position with the San Jose Sharks. So some pretty big names there. 14, Peter Lee. 15, Bobby Smith, and then 44, Brian Campbell. He had a great run there in the late 90s with the Ottawa 67. So great to see his number retired at TD Place. Now, the Ottawa 67s, they have had 113 players go on to play in the National Hockey League, which is quite remarkable. And then when you look at their playoff success, they've had a lot of success during the Brian Kilray times. I'm not going to recap all their playoff history. I'm just going to start with the year 2000. I've been doing that with all the other videos. In 2000, they lost in the second round to the Belleville Bulls. That was in 6 games. But then in 2001, they were OHL champions. They defeated the Plymouth Whalers in 6 games. And then at the Memorial Cup, they placed 4th at that tournament. In 2002, they then lost in the second round to the Toronto St. Mike's Majors in 7 games. Quite the series that round. And then in 2003, they went back to the OHL championship. And that time they lost to the Kitchener Rangers. That was in 5 games. That was quite the series between Kitchener and Ottawa. And then in 2004, they make the playoffs again, but lose in the first round, this time in 7 games to the Brampton Battalion. 2005, Ottawa goes back to the OHL championship. This time they lose to the London Knights in 5 games because London was the host for the Memorial Cup that year. They went on to the Memorial Cup Championship. However, they lost in the Memorial Cup semifinal to Sidney Crosby and the Rimouski Oceanic. So you see there, 2001, 2003, 2005, years that they've gone on to play for an OHL championship. And that also doesn't include 1999 when they were hosting the Memorial Cup. So a lot of championship runs for the 67's organization. And we're just getting started. In 2006, they lost in the first round to the Peterborough Petes. That was in 6 games. That Petes team, of course, would go on to win the OHL championship that year. In 2007, knocked out in the first round by the Belleville Bulls. That was in 5 games. 2008, another first round exit, that time to the Oshawa Generals in 4 games. And then again in 2009, they lost to the Niagara Ice Dogs in the first round in 7 games. So kind of uncharacteristic of the Ottawa 67s, losing out in the first round in 4 straight years. So it's something you don't see much of with Ottawa, especially during the Kilray era. So of course, after 2009, Brian Kilray would move on, and it kind of was a bit of a new era for this Ottawa 67s team, although Kilray was still GM at the time. In 2010, they would lose in the second round to the Mississauga St. Michael's Majors in 7 games. That one was quite the contest. Then in 2011, knocked out in the first round, surprisingly, by the Sudbury Wolves. That was a 4-game sweep from the Wolves. The Ottawa 67s, they had home ice advantage in that series and just caught off guard by Sudbury that season. Then in 2012, they returned to the Eastern Conference Final, where they were knocked out by the Niagara Ice Dogs in 5 games. Ottawa and Niagara at this moment in history, quite the rivalry between those two, meeting quite a bit in the postseason. After that, though, Ottawa would miss the playoffs back-to-back years, 2013 and 2014, which was a little odd not seeing playoff hockey in the nation's capital. Of course, they were also doing renovations at TD Place, so they had to relocate out to Canada, to the Canadian Tire Center where the Ottawa Senators play. It was a little odd. I got to call a couple of games when I was with the Sudbury Wolves in an NHL facility, and it didn't seem like all the fans carried over just because of the distance between Ottawa and Canada. And of course, the Senators dealing with that right now. They want to build a new arena downtown Ottawa, but that's a whole other issue. And this is an OHL channel. We're not going to dive into the whole NHL circumstance, but arenas are a topic of discussion when it comes to Ottawa. They would return to the playoffs in 2015. That was a first round exit against Niagara in 6 games. They would get knocked out in the first round again by Niagara in 2016, this time in 5 games. 2017, a first round exit, this time to the Mississauga Steelheads in 6 games. In 2018, another first round exit, this time to the Hamilton Bulldogs in 5 games. But the Ottawa 67's, they were back. They were a determined bunch, and they went all the way to the 2019 OHL Championship, where they ran into a brick wall, the Guelph Storm, and were knocked out in 6 games. 2020, they look like another solid team, but of course the playoffs canceled because of COVID, and we wouldn't see OHL hockey again until 2022. And in that season, the Ottawa 67's would get to the first round, but were knocked out in 4 straight by the North Bay Battalion. In 2023, they lost in the second round to the eventual OHL champion Peterborough Petes. And this past season, they were in the second round and were knocked out by the Oshawa Generals in 4 games. So despite the history, these last few years have been a little more lean than what we're used to with the 67's organization. I feel like this team, though, over the last 5 years or so, have been starting to become more competitive. And especially when you have a head coach like Cameron, who is coaching defensive systems, his style of play is really geared for playoff hockey, although just the one championship run in 2019 to speak of over the last 10 years. But I think this is a 67's team that's on the right path. And when you look at their overall history, they've won a total of 3 OHL championships, 1977, 1984, and 2001. And they've been in the Memorial Cup 5 times, and they've won the national title twice. That was in 1984 and 1999 when they were the hosts. So the Ottawa 67's, a cornerstone franchise in the Ontario Hockey League. A lot of history here. Right now, with their arena situation, it sounds like they could be getting a new facility sometime in the near future. The whole Lansdowne project has been ongoing. They redid the football stadium for the Ottawa Red Blacks. And if you've never been to TD Place, they play in the basement of one of the grandstands. It's one of the most unusual arenas I have ever been to, but it is quite the atmosphere. A lot of passion in the nation's capital when it comes to junior hockey. And when this 67's team is competitive, this fan base, they travel very well. And it'll be great to see if the 67's can get back to their winning ways, much like we saw 25 years ago. So that's how I see it from the booth. Let me know in the comments section down below your thoughts on the Ottawa 67's organization. What's one of your favorite moments if you're an Ottawa 67's fan? Love to see the interactions. Thank you very much for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Talk to you again soon.